factors for running a successful business. As a brewery management software working with over 450 breweries, the Beer30 team works with you to bring you the right solution for your brewery. From your first consultation, we tailor Beer30 to fit your brewery's unique needs. From there, our world-class customer experience team will get you onboarded and ready to go. Whether you're just starting out or expanding your operations, Beer30 helps you optimize every step from grain to glass. Schedule a free introductory demo today, and let's brew more and brew better together.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CBP Panel Fest August 5th, 2024, presented by Beer30 by The Fifth Ingredient and Market My Brewery. In this two-day virtual event, craft beer professionals will be hosting 10 panel conversations covering critical topics in the craft beer industry. And we're super excited to be the very first panel this year at 11 a.m. Eastern on Monday, August 5th, 2024. A huge thank you to Andrew Copeland and the team at Craft Beer Professionals for setting up this insightful event each year. My name is Pulkit K, Agrawal, and I'm the founder and CEO of Beer30 by The Fifth Ingredient. Beer30 is a brewery data management platform that allows breweries to track their data from grain to glass. With Beer30, breweries can focus on the modularity that fits their business to allow for purchasing raw materials, going through their production day of brew, ferment, filter, bright tank package, diving into sales orders, focusing on accounting integration, tracking COGS and losses, closing the supply chain loop with feature demand planning and material resource planning, and much, much more. Beer30 is currently used in over 450 breweries across 19 countries. Today, I'm super excited to be the moderator for today's panel, Brewery Expansions in 2024, using data to make key business decisions. The panelists joining me today are two friends and colleagues who I've had the pleasure of working with for a few years. We have Glenn Closson, who is the founder and CEO of Ivanhoe Park Brewing in Florida, USA, and Sean Turner, who is owner and CEO of Mammoth Brewing in California, USA. In today's webinar, these two brewery owners will be able to provide insights on the intricate landscape of brewery expansions, decisions to go with contract brewing versus in-house production, and the logistical challenges that come with each step of the process. The panelists will dive into the importance of data-driven decision-making, illustrating how analytics in production, sales, beer quality, and production planning are all super critical to empowering breweries to mitigate risks and optimize resource allocation. It's going to be a really cool panel, so let's just dive in. So first, I'd love to start off with both of you introducing yourself, telling us a bit about the brewery story, annual production volume, and really key differentiating factors and just your role in the brewing industry. So Glenn, would love to start off with you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Glenn Closson, as you mentioned, Ivanhoe Park Brewing Company. I started in Orlando, Florida in 2018. My past experience, I did own Beach City Brewery out in Huntington Beach from 2013 to 2016. We've been going strong out here, coming up on 6 years. We recently acquired another location. That was another brewery that we were able to kind of take over and rebrand into Ivanhoe Park Lager House. Current annual production in-house, we do about 1,800 barrels, and then we contract brew with Brew Hub in Lakeland, which was kind of the reasoning for acquiring a new brewery, to kind of bring a lot of that back in-house. We did utilize Beer30 to realize that, as costs were increasing and the contract brewing kept going up, we wanted to try to bring draft in-house. We feel cans are still pretty good price point because they have a lot of automation that we don't have, so labor factored into that just doesn't make sense. But excited to get into some of these questions and chat with everybody here.
Nice, thanks, Glenn. And Sean, how about on your end with Mammoth Brewing?
So I've owned Mammoth Brewing Company since 2006. It was actually started in 1995 in Mammoth Lakes, California, which is a very small destination mountain tourist town here in California, just on the eastern side of Yosemite National Park. We produce about 1,500 barrels out of our brewery in Mammoth Lakes. It's at 8,000 feet elevation, so it's a little bit difficult on the brewing process, boil temperatures, carbonation, things like that. So we also contract brew and also moving to alternating proprietorship for our brewing. And I can go into a little bit of detail on the decision there, whether we contract brew or alternate proprietorship. But last year we did it. We sold about 6,500 barrels in the state of California and Nevada. I've been in the beer industry since about 1992 myself. Started a small contract brewery in San Francisco, owned a distributorship in San Francisco for a number of years. Like I said, moved up to Mammoth Lakes in 2006 to acquire Mammoth Brewing Company. So that's my background and a little bit about Mammoth Brewing Company.
That's awesome. Very cool. So yeah, I guess Sean, we'll start with you a little bit. Let's just get into definitions of contract brewing and alternative proprietorship. And I know this past year has been a whirlwind at Mammoth. So let's just start with that and kind of go from there.
Yeah, and I'll actually, share with you, I purchased a brewery here in Reno, Nevada, actually about 3 years ago that had a much larger production facility. And the whole point, because I only owned Mammoth Brewing, we only brewed out of Mammoth Lakes beforehand. In order to grow the brand, we needed to be producing our own beer, and we were producing some under contract. And I ended up purchasing another brewery called Lead Dog here in Reno because it had quite a bit of extra production capability. But honestly, it turned out to be much more difficult operating two production breweries that were located about 3 hours apart from each other. And also, just with the turn in the marketplace for craft beer, I decided to sell off the Lead Dog brand and the production facility and move my production mostly to, like I said, contract brewing. And the reason why we are moving to alternating proprietorship is because, especially with the name Mammoth Brewing Company, which is very much associated with a location, I really don't like having on the cans, it's a Mammoth Brewing Company, Reno, Nevada. And with the alternating proprietorship, it allows you to put Mammoth Brewing Company on the can. So when we were doing contract brewing before, it was mostly in draft, but really now that we're in the cans, it really does make a difference to me that I want to be able to not have a different location on our package. So that's why we're making the switch. And that's the number one reason to moving to alternating proprietorship. It's a little bit more difficult with the tax reporting and such, but I'm much more comfortable. I'm fine with that because it is important to me that we have that on the label.
For the definition for people who are just watching, what does it actually mean to be an alternative proprietorship, and how does that work with the TTB or just generic definition?
Yeah, well, technically it means that during the time that we are brewing, we own the facility, and that we are just paying a rental fee to the host brewery. Those technically the labor works for Mammoth Brewing Company. Now, in actual practice, it's not that complicated. It is more that we are still paying the host brewery to produce all this beer. The real difference is just that we are responsible for all of our own TTB, excise tax reporting, brewers report of operations. Whereas when it's in a contract brew form, you literally tell the host brewery, I want 30 barrel batch packaged into this many kegs and cans, and here's my product, here's your payment, thank you very much, and you move on. Alternate proprietorship, it's a little bit more detailed, record keeping, that kind of thing.
Nice, so very much hands-on. That's really good to hear. And I think, Glenn, you mentioned at the start of this that you've also done stuff on the contract brewing side and recently were engaged with that. So can you tell us a bit more about your experience and kind of how you decided to go from contract to now doing your own production facility as well, and kind of give us some more details on that?
Yeah, for sure. We're obviously on the other side where we were purchasing the beer from another brewery. Brew Hub is there specifically to help smaller breweries out, test the market, give them an opportunity to, not invest $3 to $5 million to build out a whole brewery, but see how the market does. When we had opened Ivanhoe Park, we had enough space for about 4 more tanks, and within 6 months, we had already bought those 4 tanks. So about a year into it, we realized, we were out of space, and
that's a really good problem to have in this current industry.
It was quick. This is back in 2018, 2019, so still good times back then. But ultimately, we had picked up Publix, which is our huge grocery chain outlet out here, so we had to get volume quick, and going through a build out and everything would have been higher risk. So ultimately, Brew Hub was a great option. We're glad they're located, in Florida, so it's only about a 2-hour drive from our location, so distribution wasn't too difficult for picking it up. And ultimately, you put down your deposit and you just kind of work the recipes and get it going. So it's a good opportunity. You probably get, less margin out of it, but overall risk is pretty helpful on that side of it.
Nice. And so what's happening now with the brand and kind of what you're planning on doing next with it?
So as mentioned, we're trying to bring draft back in-house. That one we noticed. We have our own keg cooperage, so we used to use MicroStar, but realized that was a pretty hard hit on our bottom line. So we started investing in our own cooperage, so that's fully covered now. So ultimately, we see revenue growth, but now we're just kind of looking at the financials at where we can start saving money, cutting costs. So big one was storage fees were adding up, shipping costs were adding up. So bringing it into house, we alleviate the storage fees. We did the kegs last year, so that's been a nice help of reducing that cost month to month, and then obviously seeing better margins just on the product. So hopefully it'll keep growing on revenue side, but if not, we at least are cutting costs to turn that profit.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, anything you want to add to that one?
No, not necessarily. I will tell you that the move from producing our own beer to contract brewing, the margins, we're only been doing this the past 3 months, so I'll, really fine tune my reporting out on what the margins are like, but it's tight. And I will tell you that if anything, talking about data-driven decisions, it's really forced me and my team to scrutinize every dollar. Shipping is really difficult, especially in the Eastern Sierra where we're located. The corridors between Reno to Northern California, Mammoth Lakes down to Southern California. One of our host breweries is in Southern California. So we're trying to take advantage of shipping. We run a lot of our own trucks because we have to. There's just not a lot of good shipping options out here. So if anything, I appreciate the fact that it's making my team that more lean, I would like to say. Doesn't always pan out that way, but we're really trying to watch just every dollar that is being used to get the product to the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that really ties in significantly with, understanding a bit more about what's happening from a cost of goods side, right? And cost of goods sold side. So I guess a little bit of a segue into a different question here. So, you both have been using Beer30 for almost close to 2 years now. And it's been really exciting to just see the stories and the growth that you both have had personally as like friends and colleagues, but also just your brands as well. And I'd really like to understand when you're looking at these decisions, can you tell me and just tell anybody watching this on how the COGS aspect and those data pieces are really helping drive these decisions? What type of analytics are you doing? How are you diving in on a weekly, monthly basis? And kind of how are you tracking this? And if you could give some, context and some details, that would be awesome.
Yeah. I think our head brewer does a great job monitoring. I think the batch history is one of our favorite buttons that we click into just to kind of see and see the fluctuations between each batch and what's going on with that. But we just did a hazy IPA 3 months ago, and I was like, "Dear God, what did you do to make this?" So we weren't able to sell it in distribution just because it was such an expensive beer, but it does raise that red flag because when you don't have that information in front of you, you're like, like we'll price it at this price point, whatever. But it's just, you have to make those tough decisions. It would have done great in distribution, but ultimately we would have taken a huge loss just because a lot of retailers aren't paying that price point anymore. So I think the batch history is probably like our most used data point that we both kind of sit down and go through and see like why or what or what we can do to cut it down a bit.
Nice. And how often, Glenn, are you having those meetings for people that are watching? What's a cadence do you recommend having aspects of like COGS analysis with your team?
Nothing set. I think if everything's in place, we just kind of keep rolling. But if we see something stand out, he'll usually catch it or I'll catch it, and that's when we kind of go in and review. So we're at a point where we're pretty consistent with our beers. Like we try to do some fun one-offs, but we're just so busy with distribution and taproom that we're doing a lot of our core beers and our our regular year-round seasonals. So it usually is when he's doing a new batch of something fun,
Cool.
one-off, and we'll just kind of sit down and check that.
Nice. And how does that then tie in with some of the core beers you're doing for your Lager House location, which I think it's about a month old now? It just opened up. So how does that tie in with that?
So yeah, we have a whole 2 new brewers on that side that we brought on. Eric still oversees it all, but we still have the same core beers as our overall brand, but he's trying some new things as far as lagers go. We're doing a Helles, a Bock, just kind of having fun, and those will probably be more limited release, in-house only. Distribution, we're trying not to get too heavy skewed. We have an AB wholesaler in Central Florida, so they're not so flexible in adding SKUs. So it's pretty much we're just pumping what we're pumping, and then everything else is going to be poured either at the lager house or at the original tap room.
Very cool. Yeah, and Sean, how about on your end? Tell me more about the COG side and just using the data to make these decisions.
Yeah, 2 things I'll share with you. First of all, to Glenn's point, that's the exact same thing. We really track our product. And I will tell you, we fortunately in the state of California, we're allowed to sell across the bar in our own tasting room. We self-distribute as well as distribute other local breweries, Pizza Port, Topa Topa, June Shine. We distribute some other products in our local counties. And then we also sell to outside distribution. And with some of those batches, and just to Glenn's point as well, working with distributors, they're not too keen on a lot of different SKUs. So, and it's really helped us decide that, especially when you get an expensive one-off beer, no, we're not going to send it out to the distributors because we're not going to make money on it. Now, we'll make money in self-distribution. We'll make even more money when we're selling it across the bar in a pint and pitcher type fashion. But that's been very helpful for us to track that. And then I'll also say this about what happens when you lose some functionality or some brewing through Beer30. Pulkit, as you know, we were doing all 6,500 barrels and actually a total of about 9,000, 9,500 when I had the Leapdog brand through Beer30. And we were tracking every single drop through Beer30. So we could go back, check the fermentation, the attenuation, absolutely everything. But now that we've moved to contract brewing and we're not tracking that beer that's being produced for us in Beer30, well, I'm not going to go into too much detail right now, but there's been some inconsistencies in the beer that we have received from our host breweries. And then we look at the product and say, well, why is this a little bit different than this product we received from that distributor just 2 weeks ago? And we then need to ask the host brewery for that data. And I got to tell you, I miss the Beer30 being able to really track our own beers. PK, here's a little just plug for you, buddy, that I sincerely miss being able to track the production of our own beers in our own Beer30 because it's so much easier to get that data real quick when it's finally being packaged, the color's off just a little bit. Whereas now we got to go back to the host brewery and say, what happened here? So, talk about tracking. That's something that we're very much missing. And when we do switch to alternating proprietorship, we will be able to plug those brews back into our own Beer30 because I want to track that for Brewers Report of Operation, excise tax purposes, and we'll get back to that standard of being able to track our own production every day through Beer30.
Wow, Sean, that's really powerful. Thank you for that.
If that makes sense.
It does, absolutely does. And I think this is where, in each of your positions, I guess, kind of echoing what you just said, Sean, it's how do you focus maintaining that quality and production standards? Like, what are some of the pieces that you have, SOPs in place, and kind of what are the challenges that you're facing? This was a great example, Sean, of what you just said and kind of what you're doing. So how do those negotiations work with the contract facility and kind of how do you maintain that standard? Because both of your brands, Mammoth Brewing and Ivanhoe Park Brewing, they carry a weight in their local communities. And you want to make sure that when somebody drinks that beer, it's always at that same consistency that they expect. So what do you two recommend for people that are really looking to expand and looking to grow their brands and businesses that they approach with this?
Well, and I'll jump in first just because, following up on that, Every problem I've ever had in business is about misunderstood expectations between people. I'm expecting this product, you're expecting this payment or process or whatever it is. So every single problem I've ever had in business, I can narrow it down to misunderstood expectations between the parties, right? So when you enter into a contract,
that's a great key point. Yeah, misunderstood
yeah.
expectations. Love that.
So I found that when I enter into contracts with contract brewing, and I've been on both sides of the contract. We've produced for other people, and I've had my product produced at other facilities. It really comes down to defining the expectations up front, as far as when do you want the empty kegs delivered? When do you want packaging materials delivered? I'm expecting to receive product on this date. I'm lining up my transportation. It's in a lot of ways, it's all about that logistics. We share our spec sheets with our contract brewing, explaining what parameters we expect all of the product to be in when it comes to us. And I've had to have some tough conversations with some of our host breweries that say, the carbonation was not up to what we were expecting. And here it is, we got lab results, and you have to have those conversations. And the sooner the better when you do notice a problem. So just as far as directing that goes, I think it's really important that you do set up those expectations up front, very clear, making it clear that we are wanting to move to an alternative proprietorship. So just a lot of those, I hope I answered your question there.
Yeah, definitely. That's really good points. And that quote there, any conflict in business equals misunderstood expectations. I absolutely love that. And that's definitely something that I plan to just use in the future for my own business, and even just internal as we talk about, team informations or team conflicts internally. Even a lot of times it just comes down to communication and misunderstood expectations. That's really where, as executives, CEOs of all three companies here, that I think is the core that we've all learned is people management, and just getting into the communication side is so critical for that. So that's a great call out, Sean.
And if I could just say one more thing on that, is that I used to hate what if questions. What if this? What if that? But now I freaking ask what if all day long. What if this happens? What if that happens? And you don't want to get too out there landish, but it really does come down to asking the what if questions when you're dealing with your contract brewers and employees. Yep.
Nice. That's another great keynote there, Sean. Absolutely. Glenn, over to you. Your thoughts on this and quality and production standards?
Yeah, obviously you mentioned it, consistency is key. Everybody wants to try our Joyland IPA. They want it that same way every time they have it on the shelf. Luckily, BrewHub, they're a very well-established business, so they had proper contracts in place that obviously we reviewed back and forth. As far as quality went, they're, pretty transparent. If there was an issue, we were able to go to them, and we had one Park Hopper Pilsner that was a little more amberish color than we like. We like that golden color for our Pilsner. So it was SRM 6 versus SRM 3. So we went back to them. They ended up, taking accountability for it, and, we worked it out. So I think it's, to Sean's point, making sure you have those in place ahead of time, because if it happens and then you didn't have it in place, then that what if is all of a sudden like, well, that's your cost and your loss. So I think BrewHub just had it established well. So I think if you're going into like trying it, I would say do a lot of research, see if you can get somebody else to give you a template contract or kind of agreement in what they go through, just because it does get sticky.
Good point. Very good point there. And definitely, I'm sure at this point, are there just resources available for people on contract brewing, just available online, or through particular vendors that you both have experiences with?
I don't know, but you're making me want to do a Google search right now. I don't know. I swear to God, I think I've learned all my experience with contract brewing the hard way.
Those bumps and bruises result in every single what if contract change over time.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say the Brewers Association might have some information on it. It'll probably be pretty vague because obviously they're at the national level and each state's different, but it's a good place to start. That's usually where I go.
That's a good call out. Yeah, absolutely. So with that in mind, I think as you're looking at, you both have mentioned aspects with distribution and distributors. I'm very curious, how do you go about motivating your salespeople especially during a time where there's breweries that are closing, there's decreasing happening in production around the entire industry, both nationally and internationally. Kind of give me some more information and details about, motivating salespeople.
Glenn, go first.
Okay. I was like, I'll jump in. Well, I'll admit I'm a little hungover because we had our staff outing last night. So that's
Nice.
one way to keep the team motivated. We had a good time, went to Pinstripes, had a lot of beers. But ultimately, I mean, just being honest with them, being transparent. I feel like they do. We have our Slack channel and they'll send screenshots of posts of another brewery shutting down. But I mean, down here it's all industries. I mean, hair salons, so many different businesses are just going out. So it's just letting them know, we're okay, we're good, let's keep going. We've been doing a lot of pay incentive increases just to keep up with the market. I mean, cost of living is going up, so we're trying to, like I said, go back to reducing costs in certain areas so that we can keep up and, make sure we're being competitive as far as our salary goes. Overall incentive bonuses are a big one. And then we let them attend pretty much any conference. So FBG conference, Florida Brewers Guild conference is next week, and anyone that wants to go will cover their registration just because we know it's great networking. It's a good way to go to some seminars and learn what's happening in the industry and, hang out with people. It's a fun industry to be in. So I think that's kind of an incentive in its own, but it's just keeping positive, being transparent and open communication on all of it.
Very nice. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I think it's really, from my own experience in this industry, it's just about making sure that everybody's at their own limits, right? When they go out to these industry events, and just making sure that you're there for business, sometimes you're there for play, and you got to find that balance between the two for those events. Absolutely. Sean, how about on your end? How about your sales team?
Yeah, well, and we've actually gone through a little bit of a contraction lately just because, like I said, since we dropped the Lead Dog brand, which was about 33,000 barrels for us, 3,500 barrels for us. And with the transition of going from our own production facility to contract brewing, we've had some hiccups and we've had some delays in getting product to market. So to Glenn's point, it's been very, very important just to even be upfront with distributors and with salespeople that I'm sorry, we are not going to have that batch of double up brown porter for you when we said it we were going to, and I'm really sorry. And what can I do as owner to visit some of your accounts specifically? So that hopefully it's just a temporary out of stock rather than losing the tap handle permanently. It's really, for me, especially the past 3 months, I've had to break some bad news. Guys, I'm sorry, we're not going to have that batch on time like we said we were going to. But the more preemptively you can communicate that out to the marketplace, the better. Now, I will tell you that with this contraction that's going on in the marketplace, fortunately, the Mammoth Brewing Company brand is so well known. We're going to be celebrating our 30th anniversary next year. So we're a legacy brewery. We're very well known in the Southern California market because Mammoth Lakes is where most of Southern California goes to recreate in the winter for skiing or summer for backpacking and camping. So I'm taking a little bit of a pass with regard to some of our distributors for outside distribution, but I will tell you that the most important thing that we've done is protect our backyard, our own home market. So up here in Inyo County, which again, Eastern Sierra, very much in the fringe. I mean, I can see Boundary Peak of Nevada from my office here. So we are so close, so remote that I've fallen back and we're protecting Mono and Inyo County up here. And because it is such a destination resort town, my staff locally is really happy to be able to provide the beer to our customers. We get customers from Southern California who come up and say, hey, I can't get that Epic IPA or that Golden Trout. Why not? And it's because you got to buy it here. And so they're buying it at a local retail stores at, love those margins. Instead of us shipping it down to Southern California by the case, they're buying it by the 4-pack at a better margin all the way around and taking it back down to Southern California with a little bit better story to tell. It's kind of the Coors effect, where they're taking cases of beer back to their buddies in Southern California because they can't get it. So I've kind of played up that a little bit because you can't get it in Southern California right now because we have had to short some of our distributors. Apologies to our Southern California distributors if you're watching right now. But it's been nice to really reiterate with the home sales team that we are committed to protecting our home market. I view it as kind of concentric circles. We protect when we start to run out of a product, we protect our tasting room first and foremost, then our local self-distribution, then our more local distributors. And it's worked for us. Now, again, I expect to be back up to full production here over the next couple of months to be able to support all the distribution channels that we've established over the past couple of years. But it's been a little bit of a challenge, and I've tried to turn it into a positive as much as possible for our local market.
That's very powerful to hear. Are either of you getting into any online sales in the future and having people go direct to consumer on that as well, if allowed in either California or Florida, from your experiences?
Florida's
Not really. We did it for a little while. Glenn, I'm sorry, I'll jump in just and answer real quick. We did it for a while, but we have seen a real drop off in our mail order, and that's okay. I wasn't a big fan of mailing beer anyway, so it's kind of okay.
Yeah. And Glenn, you were saying?
Florida doesn't allow anything, so we tried with Taproom out of New York for a bit, but they're like a national grasp and we're a very local community brewery. So we sold through what we did, but we only did one order with them.
Yeah. Okay. I guess shifting topics briefly, it'd be really cool to understand, as you're looking at those production volumes that you're both talking about, how do you go about the whole production planning process, right? It seems like it's a really big game of Tetris. And when am I brewing an IPA, lager, trout, etc.? So drizzling IPA. So yeah, I'd love to hear more from both of you guys about the production planning and just mitigating risks as well associated with that.
I'll be honest. I wish we had better production planning. The historical data does not work in your favor because everything's cyclical. Like 1 week, 2-Paksha Porter will just fly off the shelf and we'll get double batched backed up, and then all of a sudden the distributor picks it up.
Say the name of that beer one more time.
2-Paksha Porter. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Great name.
Thank you. That's one of our top award-winning beers.
Nice.
But yeah, there's no good data that shows anything consistent because 1 week IPA will fly off the shelf, 1 week Park Hopper Pilsner will run through. So I wish there was a better way to hone in on that, because I feel like sometimes we are flying by the seat of our pants where we're like, oh, well, now Toboggan's all out. That we got to get it in. I feel like we're lucky in this day and age where BSG, Country Malt, they can ship within 24 hours. So worst case scenario, we kind of sit down week by week. We already know what we want to do in the next 4 weeks, but that always changes. It's never consistent. We know, obviously Haftoktoberfest is our Vienna lager, so we have Oktoberfest coming up, so we have that in the tanks. So we kind of look at big landmark events throughout the year to make sure we have that lined up. But as far as distribution, I don't know if there's ever been consistency on what moves and what doesn't move.
Yep, fair enough. And Sean, how about on your end for production planning?
Fair enough. Well, in Mammoth Lakes, California, I will tell you that I've always said the bad news, challenging part is that we are a very, very seasonal business. Winter skiing, summer camping, game on. It's just, we're going. And then the shoulder seasons of spring and fall are very slow. So the challenge is that we're seasonal, but the good news is that we're very predictable seasonal. Even when we don't have good snow years, the tourists are coming. Summers, as long as we don't have any wildfires, knock on wood, we know that from Father's Day until Labor Day, we're just packed. And we've got very good history with regard to what sells the best, obviously IPAs. And so what we've been able to predict, what I have been seeing though, is some of the fads or trends. And, what's the difference between a fad or a trend, right? The trend is definitely we're seeing a switch to lighter style beers. Our Pilsner is Mammoth Pilsner that we've been making for a while, 42 days in the tanks. It's never been, well, I will say that it's always been an okay seller, but this last summer it's been one of our best sellers. So I'm seeing that trend. Some sours that we experimented with. We seem to have some pretty good following with our elderberry sour and our huckleberry sour. We use local berries and we buy a lot of concentrate. Seltzer, that was a fad. That was great. You bet we jumped on that bandwagon for a year. But now we are stocking other people's seltzers because we just decided we're not in the seltzer business. So it
Side
is.
note, I'm so always open to a mango white claw at seltzer seasons when you go out to the beach or anything. Absolutely still in that seltzer mode for sure.
Yeah. So we've got pretty good records. We've been doing this for almost 30 years in the Eastern Sierra. So we've got really good records about, what we know is going to sell and when. But it's all a game of logistics, right? And by the way, one more shout out to all of our suppliers. Glenn, you mentioned BSG, Berlin, all our hop suppliers. I gotta just do a quick shout out to all our suppliers. We couldn't do it without them. And thank God they are pretty responsive to, oh crap, I forgot that we need these labels and we need them by Friday. How quick can you get them to us? And, thank God they're pretty quick to work with us. So that really does save our butt in a number of those instances where you realized we're out of keg collar.
Yeah, no, we've been saved a lot of times, and I mean that's why we'll plan it out, but when we actually put the order in, we know it's going to be there the next day. So definitely helps out having warehouses across the nation because that just gives easier access to all of us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that logistics component is definitely very critical if you're trying to do just in time as well, right? Because one of the biggest downsides ends up being you just have way too much pack text or way too many items or grains or hops that are just sitting in your warehouse space. And that's just assets that are aging over time and not actually being utilized. So finding that balance in the just in time aspect is super critical for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so with that, in the industry as a whole, the taproom aspect is just so clutch right now. And you both are relying so heavily on the taproom side. I'd love to know just what are the upcoming fun events that you both have coming up in the few months. And Sean, I'm going to start with you and this amazing mustache that you have going on and kind of what that looks like and why is that?
So not every year, but most years I'll start November 1st, shave it down the night before and start growing a mustache. And so it's been 9 months now of growing this out. And like I said, it waxes up pretty nice. Here in a week and a half, we have the Mammoth Festival of Beers in Palooza, which is an event that we've hosted up here in Mammoth Lakes for almost 30 years. And just 2 years ago, I actually sold it off to somebody who is a true event producer. And already he's done some things that, right away I thought to myself, oh, I should have thought of that myself. Because I'm a beer guy. We're not an event producer. And it was great. It started out as a beer event with a music component. It's since turned into a music event with a beer component, but it's a great beer. It is a great beer event. And because we are located at 8,000 feet just east of Yosemite National Park, all the breweries in California and Nevada, the event benefits the California Craft Brewers Association and a lot of nonprofits in Mammoth Lakes that are near and dear to my heart. Actually, the nonprofits generate over $50,000 just on their own,
huge. Nice.
Running the bars, parking, that kind of thing. So it's 4 days long. This year, it's always the first weekend in August. So this year, it's August 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So it's coming up here in about a week and a half. And this is the last year that I'm actually emceeing for the brewers. So when we have the brewers reception, when we're doing the brewers meeting, I do like to wax up and put on my hat and go out there and meet all the breweries. I really do view it as a family reunion. I've been in this industry for well, over 30 years now. And so, I know a lot of these people year after year, and it's a great event. And so that's the big event on my radar coming up.
Very nice. Thanks, Sean. And Glenn, how about on your end? What do you have happening in the new tap room?
Yeah, I mean, talk about that beer fest. When I owned the brewery in California, all the breweries love going up to that. They make a big weekend out of it. They go camping. You get to like turn, like you go walk through the trees, and then all of a sudden there's a brewery there pouring beer. So it's definitely a cool event. Out here, yeah, tap room is key. I mean, with Ivanhoe Park Brewing Co., we do so many events. We do consistently Family Day every fourth Sunday, where we have free bounce house, free family DJ. We have a Florida Vintage Market on second Sunday out there. Some big ones coming up. We have our big Oktoberfest, obviously at Lager House. We're going to go big for that.
Cool. Nice.
Kicking off September 21st. So we have a full kitchen over there. So we'll be doing all the big brats, the pretzels, beer cheese. So liters of beer, contests, things like that. And then our big one every year is Return to Joyland. This year will be October 13th. Usually we have a big beer fest. We've done it in our parking lot. Last year we did it over on Lake Ivanhoe, and it was a great venue. This year we'll probably do some collaborations with some Florida breweries and just kind of have a big party that way, doing some unique stuff with that. So should be fun.
Nice. That's awesome. And so kind of as we, get towards the end of this webinar, I think one of the key things that I'd love to hear from both of you is what are you most excited about in 2025? Right. And as you look into this next year, you're both at that cusp of expansion this year, kind of a building year for both of you. What does 2025 entail?
I'll go first. I'll just kind of throw there. There's three things that I'm really excited about. We are really leaning into our lifestyle component. It's not just about beer anymore. Sure, anybody can make beer, but we're really going to be leaning into our lifestyle component, which is living in the Eastern Sierra. And it's not just the mountains, but it's actually the deserts of the high deserts of Nevada. Like I said, we're right on the border between California and Nevada, just east of Yosemite. And this is a big mountain biking, fly fishing, camping, backpacking. Winter, it's all about skiing and boarding. Again, more backcountry. So we're really leaning into that with the lifestyle component. And that kind of, and part of that is going to be in the merchandise. We do a lot of business in merchandise. Between the t-shirts, sure, somebody can come to Mammoth Mountain Ski Area, but why buy a Mammoth Mountain Ski Area t-shirt when you can have a Mammoth Brewing t-shirt? So we've been doing well with that. And so I'm really focused on growing our web presence for merchandise, lifestyle, leaning into that. That kind of speaks a little bit to something else that we're going to start doing. We have so our brewery in Mammoth Lakes is 15 barrels, 30-barrel fermenters, and I'm really wanting to reach out to more doing collaboration brews, not just with other breweries, but other businesses as well. This is something that whether you're a clothing company, and there's a couple in Mammoth Lakes that specifically focus on mountain apparel, or if it's restaurants and bars in Southern California, hey, we can offer a package where you come up to Mammoth Lakes, brew 30 barrels worth of beer right off the trip as a business expense to a mountain resort town. So we're going to be leaning into that more and more, doing a lot more collaborations. And then the final thing that I'm really excited about is we've been making an imperial root beer, non-alcoholic, for a number of years. And we've only been doing it on draft. But in 2025, I've set a goal for our team to get into package to start really expanding our craft soda business. Just because
Very
that's,
nice.
Again, when you're seeing beer not doing as well as it was, the double-digit growths that we all got lax on because we expected it to keep doing double-digit growth. Now it's really important to us, in my opinion, that we expand what we do more and more. So those are the three things that I'm really focusing our team on for the coming year.
That's really cool. And I'm hoping with this one, this could lead to a collaboration brew between the two of you. as well for that second piece.
Glenn, I'll call you.
I like it.
Yeah, and then definitely the craft soda game is actually very interesting. Are you planning on going beyond just root beer, or is that kind of the only one that you're focused on?
Yeah, we'll look into that. One thing at a time, and I gotta kind of, focus on that. But yeah, kind of looking at a couple different products. It's just that's what's been doing really well for us.
Nice.
So
Are you going to
it's
do
actually, believe it or not,
30 barrel batches that you then end up
oh
bottling
yeah,
and canning out?
we go through a 30 barrel batch, well, in the summer in 4 weeks. In the shoulder season, we'll go through it lots. It's our number one growler and crowler fill out of our tasting room. And
What over any of your beers?
yes, now there's a reason for that. We've done the analytics on this. Again, talking about
Data-driven decisions. Perfect segue. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because, we've got 13 other beers that you can choose from to fill your growler and only one non-alcoholic. And are very much a family destination resort town. So parents come up.
Something for the kids.
Yeah, they grab 4 packs of cans out of the cooler, but let's fill a crowler for the kids. Oh, let's get 2. Well, we sell them in 3 packs. Let's sell you 3. So, it's just kind of always just a little bit of just kind of upselling along those lines. But yeah, that's the reason why it's their number one filler.
Nice. That's really cool. And so in that vein, on the taproom side, how often are you making those data-driven meetings as well about, hey, this idea of, hey, let's use 3-pack instead of 2 or 1? How did you come up with that assessment?
All the time we're analyzing the data. We're just constantly looking at it. And I've got a great team because frankly, they're the ones that come to me and say, hey, PackTech sells these 3-packs for the 32-ounce growler. Yes, let's order those then. So, it's a lot of those kind of things that we're constantly looking at, reminding our frontline staff, did you find the size of t-shirt you're looking for, hats, whatever. There's ideas. Mammoth Lakes just installed a Frisbee disc golf course.
Nice.
And so right away we bought some discs, some logo discs, and they sell very well. Just kind of always looking at different ideas and what we can do out there. So yeah, that's kind of where we focus.
Awesome. And the key here being, more revenue streams than just beer, clearly. So that's awesome. And Glenn, how about on your end for 2025? What are you most excited about?
Oh man, we have 3 projects underway. Unfortunately, I don't want to count my eggs before they hatched. So
fair enough. Yeah, whatever you want to share, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah. So those 3 projects are in the works. So hopefully we'll be announcing in the next couple months those. One thing that we've always kind of fallen on as our mission statement was commitment to community.
Cool.
Obviously with COVID, the community really came together. They didn't need to buy beer, but they kept filling their fridge just because they wanted to buy to-go product to keep us alive. But we are hoping to, like he mentioned, doing a line of branding to that commitment to community. So it's like a C2C brand that kind of gets people together, gives support, hopefully eventually be able to donate proceeds each month to a various nonprofit that we get to choose. So that's something that we want to kind of hopefully jump in 2025 as we start, getting normal day-to-day operations locked in.
That's going to be great, Glenn. And that's kudos to you of getting into this nonprofit space and, making those contributions. That's really cool to hear and really awesome to hear that focus on that mission and community piece of it. So really nice. Awesome. As we kind of wrap up here, is there anything we haven't talked about yet that either of you guys want to mention before we do some closing thoughts? Anything?
Good conversation.
Nice. So really, just to kind of wrap up here, I think what would be awesome is for both of you guys to just share one action item that you'd suggest for any brewery that's looking to expand. Maybe they're reassessing their business plans into 2025. Based on both of your experiences, what would be like one action item that you would tell them to do as they watch this panel?
Yeah.
Well, I'll jump in real quick and just say, I am so much more cautious now on freaking everything I do. There was a time when, somebody wanted to propose a chocolate porter with desert sage and peanut butter. I don't know. But it was just now I'm very, very cautious in just everything this company does. There's, I can tell you story after story about ideas that internally we were convinced was going to be the best selling thing, whether it was a merchandise item or a beer or something along those lines. And now I'm just very, very cautious when I'm entering the marketplace. Now, look, the market may change here, as we all know, in the next 6 months or certainly over the next 6 years. I'm confident in our destination being able to control our own product across our own bar. But when it comes to the beer that we're having produced for us at host breweries, or where we're selling the product across somebody else's bar, now I'm literally, vetting customers, just retail customers, just because I want to know that they're going to be representing our product to the very best that they can. And because have had some out of stocks, not that I've wanted to, but we've been kind of picky on who we are shipping beer to. And as I said before, which markets we are protecting over other markets. And it's a strategic decision. And again, to my distributors who might be watching who are out of stock right now, it's not that we're abandoning you. It's just that, we ourselves are navigating this transition as best we can and really focusing on what sells, leading with those products, and just looking at the marketplace as a whole.
Very nice. Great words there. So recapping, that focus on caution is a great action item for everybody watching, and being strategic, as you're being cautious about it and using that data to drive the caution, the good, the bad, the warning signs, asking the what if questions, like that all goes into that granularity of being cautious. So really good there, Sean. Glenn, how about on your end? One action item that you'd suggest for anybody looking to expand from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, we're all kind of reassessing everything in the past couple of years as far as what our business plan is, what our business model looks like. Again, yeah, definitely looking at what's selling, what's not selling. As I mentioned before, we stick to those 4 core beers and we pump volume of that, and that's what we do. And we don't want to kind of deter from that. It'd be great to have 100 SKUs in the marketplace, but it's a lot of the bigger companies like Disney and the parks, they're all scaling back their SKUs. So if you want to start landing those higher volume accounts, you gotta here's my niche. This is what I do. These are what you get to choose from. Because yeah, a few years ago it got out of control. Every restaurant wanted their own beer, and you're like, yeah, that's great, that's cool. But then all of a sudden you're sitting on 15 barrels of beer that's not moving. So I think definitely just looking at what's actually selling per the data, not what you think is selling. Because I know we put peanut butter jelly sour on tap. It goes quick, but is it, one, economical to make, and 2, is it, because it has that hype behind it, like, oh, I better drink it now. So definitely using the data to make that decision.
So yeah, really good summary there as well, seeing what's selling, what's not selling, and using that data. So amazing. Thank you both for really joining in on this, and thank you for everybody tuning in and watching the Craft Beer Professionals webinar. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me at pk@thefifthingredient.com. Sean, what's your email address?
Sean at Mammoth Brewing Co. CO.com, and I spell my name SEAM.
Beautiful. And Glenn, on your end?
It's Glenn at IvanhoeParkBrewing.com.
Beautiful. And all the information will be in the description in this webinar. It's also available on Spotify and YouTube, so it'll be really cool to just keep the momentum going with this. And thank you both, Glenn and Sean, for joining in.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Cheers, everyone.